Ben Ranson watched them train this morning before they fly to Portugal this afternoon. Ben, good afternoon to you. He remains defiant there, as we saw with Juliet, but they are 13th in the Premier League. So let's pick up the theme of the end of that interview. How important is it that he turns this round quickly?
Yeah, it certainly feels important, doesn't it? And you're right to point to the league position. It's been a pretty torrid start to the season in Premier League terms, and I suppose the 2-3-0 home defeats have been the hardest to stomach for Manchester United fans. We saw one on Sunday against Tottenham. Previously it was Liverpool that came to Old Trafford and won so convincingly, and it's meant that they've got just 2 wins in the Premier League so far this season. They're sitting well off the pace, and it's not quite the progress which Erik ten Hag has told us repeatedly over the last 18-24 months that he feels he's making with the team, because they're just labouring, aren't they, in terms of results. They're not scoring enough goals. But it was interesting to hear that chat with him sitting down with Juliet Farrington there, talking honestly about his situation. A lot of it we have heard before in press conferences, in the sense that we hear him talk about the trophies, and we hear him talk about the ambitions and the targets to win. What was revealing, I think, was the insight into how he sees the collective responsibility. I mean, I love the line in there where he says, I have to make them play, when he was asked about the players on the pitch and their game management. I thought that was really interesting. He's trying to take that shared responsibility, especially when there's been plenty of criticism. And really interesting too to hear him talk about the fans having a right to be impatient. Well, I'd counter that by saying, actually, I think the Manchester United fans have been incredibly patient, because they will be frustrated, and they will have been frustrated over the last couple of seasons as well. They haven't made the progress in challenging for the league title where this club expects to be, but they've largely stuck with the manager and stuck with the players, and that was the case again for large parts of the match, despite the scoreline on Sunday.
Everyone's having a go, everyone's having their say, including one of his former coaches. Does it kind of increase the siege mentality feeling there?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you're referencing an interview or some quotes that Benny McCarthy has given to a Portuguese media outlet in the last 24 hours, when he was been speaking about the mentality of the players, speaking a little bit about Erik ten Hag as well. And he was asked specifically, the former coach here, why United failed to be so competitive, or as competitive as perhaps they should be, particularly in big matches. And he suggested that the modern players, the players that he worked here with Erik ten Hag with over the last couple of seasons, perhaps need a bit more passion and fire, and perhaps that Erik ten Hag doesn't have that. Well, ten Hag himself there, I mean, you heard it in the interview that we've done, the exclusive interview, talking about the players and the mentality, talking about they need the belief, they need to have faith in his ideas, but also the fact that he's been studying what has been going wrong, studying the problems and trying to resolve the issues. But look, there's no doubt it is coming to a head potentially, because you look ahead at the next group of fixtures and the dreaded international break is looming. It's a time when managers have found their positions in increasing under the spotlight and under pressure in recent seasons. Before that, they've got 2 tricky away games. It starts with that tie against Porto away from home tomorrow night. They travel there this afternoon for that game. That looks tricky. And then at the weekend before the international break is an away game against Aston Villa, a team that, in contrast to Manchester United, are making progress. They're in the Champions League, let's not forget, and they're challenging once again at the top of the Premier League table. So really, you'd have to say Ten Hag needs to win at least one of those 2 games to try and just dampen and quieten some of the noise around his position.
So with that dreaded Thursday, Sunday turnaround, they'll need the squad fitness news. Any sign of Kobbie Mainoo at training?
Yeah, well, that's the positive, I suppose, because obviously Kobbie Mainoo was one of the players that had to be withdrawn from the game against Tottenham. He went off seeming to have some sort of a hamstring or muscular injury, didn't reappear for the second half. Well, it was great to see him out there today. He was taking a full part in that open 15 minutes that we get to see ahead of that Porto game. He was taking a full part in the rondos, looked very happy and comfortable. Likewise, positive news on Harry Maguire. He was also there, having missed the weekend game with a knock. And Rasmus Højlund was there too, the striker who's yet to start a game for Manchester United so far this season after having his own injury issues in pre-season, but has come off the bench, as he indeed did at the weekend. weekend, so he looks as though he may be in line for his first start. The major absentees, as expected, Lenny Yoro, also Luke Shaw, still not out with the group. That's still an ongoing issue for United. And today, no Mason Mount. Now, Mount, you might remember, came on and then was taken off again at the weekend with a head injury, but I'm told it's just a precaution why he sat out of training today. He's passed the necessary concussion protocol, so that's good news, but he remains out to travel to Portugal this afternoon for that game tomorrow.
Thank you, Ben.
This is significant breaking news. We all saw Bruno Fernandes trudging from the pitch on Super Sunday, having been sent off for that foul on James Maddison. I can tell you, it has been rescinded. Manchester United claimed wrongful dismissal, and Bruno Fernandes has had that red card rescinded. So he was looking like he was going to miss their league fixtures against Villa, Brentford and West Ham. Now, though, he will be available following a successful appeal. So Manchester United appealed against Bruno Fernandes' red card at the weekend. They have been successful in that appeal. That is big breaking news.
Gentlemen, Manchester United are the gift that keep on giving. It feels like we talk about them every day. Some reports, Mike McGrath in the Telegraph, saying that Erik ten Hag is being backed by senior players to turn things around at Manchester United. Conflicting reports elsewhere saying that some players have had enough of him. Henry, I'll come to you first. What is the truth of the matter?
Well, good question. I mean, it's the Old Trafford okey-cokey, in, out with Ten Hag after every game, almost like every half. There's a sort of debate online. Less so actually inside the stadium, where the Manchester United fans have been magnificent. And I think in any other club and any other support, Ten Hag would have gone by now. I mean, it's interesting, the sort of the conflicting reports of some support him. Probably the players who were with him at Ajax and have a loyalty to him and has brought them to this great club. And then maybe one or two others who are either not in the team or whatever are briefing, or their agents or family members are briefing, or let it be known that they're not so happy with him. But I mean, you know, the key decision is made upstairs with Ineos. And you can get rid of Erik ten Hag, and he probably will go at some point during the season. You can put Ruud Nistelrooy in as an interim, who'd be, I think, the 8th or 9th caretaker or permanent manager since Sir Alex left 11 years ago. But you've got to look beyond that. It's not simply about Ten Hag. It's about the culture of the club, which has been endemic since the Glazers came in, and it's proliferated post Sir Alex Ferguson, post David Gill, in that it all seems to be about the individuals. It's about money. It's not really been about what this great football club should be about, which is about the football. It's about the pursuit of trophies. It's about team before self, and they've not done that. So absolutely, they may well get rid of Erik ten Hag. It's probably a surprise he's lasted so long, but there's systemic issues at Manchester United that have also to be dealt with by Ineos.
Charlie, as Henry says, that this sort of when rather than if situation with Erik ten Hag, it's impossible not to feel sort of quite a deal of sympathy for him, because Manchester United's hierarchy were very open in courting other managers before that FA Cup final, that surprise result in the FA Cup final. Then they were kind of backed into a corner, and now it kind of feels like he doesn't really have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's carried himself really impressively. It's been really difficult for him. Ultimately, his management hasn't been good enough, and his signings haven't been good enough. And in terms of some of the reports about the players, I think they are behind him. But that's not quite enough. But equally, those players that are behind him, I think they are still talking about the fact that they know that he's probably going to get the sack, because Manchester United are not getting any better. You know, they're going around in circles. They're not an improvement on the team that finished 8th last season. And, you know, we saw that on Sunday, regardless of Fernandes getting sent off, that they've lost that game by the same scoreline anyway. And as Henry said, you know, fair play to the Man United fans. That they were right behind the manager, still right behind the team. They weren't getting on the backs of the players. But there's going to come a point, obviously, a really tough game in Porto on Thursday. I'm going out there tomorrow, so Ten Hag will be facing the media at 7 o'clock, and that will be a difficult game. And of course, they're at Aston Villa on Sunday, so it's not getting any easier for him. And that's why, as I said, it does feel the end game. And I think Dan Ashworth, quite soon, is going to be looking to appoint another manager, having sacked Ten Hag.
And Charlie, just staying with you, because on the back page of your paper, The Sun, these quotes from Benny McCarthy saying he lacks passion, he wastes the top talents. I mean, it's one thing with Manchester United that they don't seem to have any sort of style of play. You look at Arsenal, Manchester City, Tottenham, Aston Villa, you know what their style of play is. Manchester United don't seem to have a style. That's one thing. But when you're also saying that the manager lacks the ability to manage, to get the best out of players, that's almost an even bigger concern.
Yeah, he certainly hasn't got the best out of the players. And obviously, the Ronaldo was a difficult situation. I don't think Ronaldo was particularly helpful either. But in general, these players are underperforming, and equally, the players they are signing just don't seem to be at the levels that Manchester United really need. And of course, they're not helped by the fact they've got a captain who I don't think is a very good Manchester United captain. And obviously, he's got a reprieve from his red card, but I'm not sure Fernandes still being available for the Aston Villa game is any great help, to be honest.
And Henry, we should clarify, Benny McCarthy, a former number 2 to Erik ten Hag, so he's qualified to talk about this. When a number 2 comes out and says something like that, I mean, how concerned would you be if you're a Manchester United fan hearing that?
Well, I'm sure Manchester United fans will want to listen to the whole podcast in which Benny McCarthy talks and he describes Erik ten Hag as the top tactically. He's very effusive in his praise of ten Hag, the tactician. He says, yes, as Charlie's mentioned, the fact that he doesn't appear to sort of have the passion and to stand on the edge of the technical area and show some urgency to the players. And, the players were looking around, and if they want inspiration, they're not getting that in terms of the body language from the manager. But what Benny McCarthy also says, which is slightly buried down some of the reports, but really jumps out in the podcast, is that he says that some of the Manchester United players just weren't trying hard enough in training. He said Diogo Dalot and Bruno Fernandes, absolutely, and obviously there's a local connection there in terms of where he was giving the interview. But he was sort of praising them for their intensity and their commitment in training, and questioned the commitment of some others. Now, that might have been players who left in the summer. He doesn't actually name them. But if I was a Manchester United fan, that would be the thing that would most alarm me about the Benny McCarthy interview, the fact that he questioned the commitment of some of the players.
And as I said earlier on, Manchester United do seem to be the gift that keeps on giving. There's so many different talking points about them. Martin Ziegler has this report, Charlie, that the murky world of PSR raising its head again, that Manchester United face fresh PSR challenge if they fail to reach the Champions League. On the evidence of what we've seen so far this season, and certainly that capitulation against Tottenham on Sunday, it's very difficult to imagine that they're going to be finishing in top 4 this season and could face another sort of PSR difficulty.
Yeah, obviously they've got lots of contracts and performance-based deals, and they could. Was it £10 million they could lose if they don't get into the Champions League? I mean, they're not going to do that, are they? It'd be, incredible if they managed to do that. The one thing is maybe they win the Europa League, which is probably the only way I can see them getting to the Champions League next year. But really difficult times for United, and I don't think any of us can really see it getting any better at the moment.
The one little ray of sunshine for them today, I suppose, Henry, or is it indeed a ray of sunshine, is that Bruno Fernandes is available for them this weekend for that trip that Charlie mentioned to Villa Park. If we sort of talk about, first of all, about the process of that red card, because it came out of the pocket pretty quickly and VAR refused to overturn it. Here we are, 2 days later, the red card has been overturned. It's a bit farcical when it's a situation like that, isn't it?
So we're effectively having a review of a decision. So absolutely, I mean, he probably is looking back on it the right decision, and Bruno Fernandes is now cleared to play. Whether that actually helps Ten Hag, because I agree with Charlie, I don't think he's a natural leader. I think the way he behaves at times on the pitch, throwing his arms around, his attitude towards referees. I mean, he obviously cares and he's committed to the team, and you can see that. Benny McCarthy was alluding to that, but I don't think it sends out the best message. So do they actually need him in these games? I mean, they do have options in that position. You could play Eriksen there. I mean, it depends on Mount's fitness. You could play him in there. Or you could sort of bolster midfield and make it a little bit less easy to drive through, as James Maddison and Dejan Kulusevski were doing on Sunday. So maybe it's a sort of mixed blessing. But I think, as you say, this long-winded decision has come to the correct conclusion ultimately.